The crowd's roar filled the air with anticipation as the moment arrived. The chutes swung open, launching the countdown to the most exhilarating and dangerous 8 seconds in sports. Roaring out of the chute came the bull, twisting and kicking in frustration, and seated on top of 2,000 pounds of raging muscle and sinew was a calm, experienced cowboy, his gloved hand clenched tight on the bull rope, a lifeline in the chaos. Glenn Keeley held on confidently, held on for dear life, his veteran frame absorbing the angry jerking and tossing of the massive beast he was straddled on. Seconds stretched into an eternity as two stubborn wills clashed, man and bull battling for dominance, while the crowd cheered encouragements excitedly. Finally, and all too soon, Glenn comes tumbling off, but not before the buzzer rings out loud and clear. He had made the buzzer. Fist raised high, Glenn rose with glee to face the roaring crowd. He had met the challenge and come out on top, as he always did. This was Glenn's second home. This was his favorite sport. He was king of the rodeo, and he was born to be here. Until one fateful day in 2000, when a simple accident would turn out to bring one of the saddest chapters in professional bull riding history. What happened to this professional bull rider in those final terrifying moments? Join us as we uncover the tragic details of what would become the first death in professional bull riders event history. From the moment Glenn Keeley stepped into the rodeo world, he was bound for greatness. Glenn Keeley was born into a family where rodeo wasn't just a sport, but a way of life. The legacy of bravery and passion for bull riding ran deep in their veins and would set Glenn's career path for life. The Keeleys were no strangers to the dangers of bull riding, especially after a stark reminder came in 1994, when Glenn's brother Jason nearly lost his life in a terrifying encounter with a bull. Yet, this close brush with death did not deter the family. Instead, it spurred them on. Jason's miraculous recovery and return to bull riding inspired Glenn and the rest of the family, including his parents, sister, and 5 brothers, all of whom would face down bulls in the ring at various points in their lives. Despite his stellar achievements and the reverence he commanded, Glenn remained grounded and approachable. He was a beacon of support for up-and-coming riders, always ready to lend a hand or offer advice. In the Canadian rodeo scene, Glenn quickly became a legend. By the time he was just 12 or 13, everyone knew him as the kid who could ride. By 14, he was a champion steer rider. His rising star didn't stop there. By 18, he had seized the bull riding title, establishing himself as a force to be reckoned with. He was, to those who knew the sport, what Michael Jordan was to basketball, a once-in-a-generation talent. But unlike basketball, there are no timeouts in bull riding, no four corners offense, no halftime breaks, no towels to throw in. There's only one cowboy, one angry bull, and 8 desperate seconds. For those unfamiliar with rodeo, here are some of the basics in the sport of bull riding. The rider will grip the bull rope with one hand and must stay on top of the bucking bull for 8 full seconds. The timer only begins when the bull exits the chute completely by breaking the gate with its shoulder. The rider's free hand must remain raised. If the rider touches the bull or themselves before the 8 seconds elapse, they get no points. Each attempt is timed until the rider touches the ground or the bull with their free hand. To qualify, the rider must remain mounted for the full 8 seconds while spurring in a rhythmic motion. If the rider fails to stay on for 8 seconds, they receive no score. A perfect score in bull riding is 100, with 50 points allocated to the rider and 50 for the bull. Judges rate riders on their ability to stay in control, and bulls are rated on how aggressive and unstable they are. To keep things on an even field, if a rider draws a sedate, calm bull, they are awarded a re-ride. This 8-second ride tests everything: skill, athleticism, control, strength, guts. It's what makes bull riding the extreme sport that it is. There's only been one perfect score in the history of bull riding, and that came in 1991 with Wade Leslie and Bull Wolfman Skull at a professional Rodeo Cowboy Association event in Washington. Yet, in the hearts of many, if there was ever a rider capable of mirroring such a feat, it was Glenn Keeley. By the time Glenn turned 18, he was already competing with the top cowboys around the globe. His natural talent was so clear that many thought he could be the next to score a perfect 100, just like the legendary ride in 1991. Glenn was on a path that seemed to lead straight to the Bull Riding Hall of Fame, his name set to be remembered among the greats, when life took a tragic turn. It was March 24, 2000, at the Professional Bull Riding Bud Light Cup Series in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He drew a notoriously famous bull named Promised Land for the rodeo events that day. Weighing slightly over 2,000 pounds, Promised Land was an athletic, strong bull that spun faster and jumped higher than a bull his size ought to be able to do. Promised Land was a regular season bull and had won 1999 Co-Bull of the year before. By many accounts, he was a reasonably good-tempered and famous bull. Glenn was sitting ninth in the PBR's world standings on that day. It was one of his best years on record, and he already had nearly $34,000 in earnings, enough to guarantee him a spot at the World Finals. The other riders wished him well once his number came up. Glenn was all set, focused, and ready on Promised Land. The moment they opened the gate, Promised Land charged out, wild and strong, while Glenn held on tight, gritting it out, trying his best to stay on. True to his nature, Promised Land exploded out the chute, twisting violently to dislodge his rider. Glenn rode masterfully, leaning into each buck and twist as Promised Land strove to dislodge his unwanted passenger. Glenn moved with the bull's motions, her body absorbing the jerks and jolts, hand gripping the rope tightly. The ride lasted for 8 interminable seconds before finally Promised Land succeeded in launching the seasoned cowboy upward. The crowd cheered, admiring the skill and bravery. But the thrill of victory was short-lived. Gravity pulled Glenn back towards the earth, directly into the path of the still rampaging bull. In a cruel twist of fate, Promised Land's rear hooves struck Glenn in a devastating blow that sealed a tragic end to what was a display of exceptional skill and bravery. The impact on the hard ground was only the beginning of the horror, as the bull's hooves connected with Glenn in a fatal moment of misfortune. It was a shocking accident. Right then, it was clear his arm was badly hurt, probably broken. Later, they found out Glenn had more injuries, broken ribs, and an injured lung. At first glance, the injuries, though severe, didn't seem life-threatening to anyone, not even to the cowboy himself. Glenn was conscious, responsive, and his usual resilient self. The seriousness of his condition was masked by his toughness and the adrenaline of the moment. Glenn had on all the right gear that day, the same kind that bull riders had been wearing more and more to keep safe. After the tragic loss of Lane Frost, a legend in the sport who died after being rammed in the back with the bull's horn, breaking several of his ribs and severing an artery, every pro rider started wearing a special vest. Designed by Cody Lambert, a professional bull riding founder, this vest is like a bulletproof vest, but for horns. It's made to soak up the shock from a bull's hits, spreading out the force so it doesn't all hit one spot too hard. Riders also put on helmets to keep their head safe from the bull or the ground if they fall. But even with all this protection, riding a bull is still very dangerous. Bulls are huge and strong, and when they buck, they can hit with a power that's hard to guard against completely. In Glenn's situation, he was wearing one of these protective vests. However, when the bull's hoof hit him, it hit his chest with so much direct force that it caused deadly damage inside, to his heart and other organs. The vest did its job protecting his ribs and the outside of his torso, but the force was too focused, and the damage inside was too much to survive. Safety gear does save lives and prevents injuries every year, but sometimes a hit comes from such an angle or with such force that it's more than even the best gear can handle. The chest and belly areas are especially at risk because vests can't fully protect against a direct hit from a bull that weighs around 2,000 pounds. The seasoned veteran was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that was all it took. Beneath Glenn's calm exterior, a critical situation was unfolding. Glenn's initial bravery and resilience hid the true danger of his internal injuries. He was immediately taken for medical attention, although no one suspected anything severe. Things changed quickly when at the hospital, when the doctors looked inside his body. They found he was bleeding badly. His liver was cut, damaged by the fall and the impact of hooves. Despite their efforts, Glenn lost too much blood too quickly. Before the doctors could fix the damage, it was too late. In his last moments, Glenn Keeley passed away on the operating table because of the internal bleeding. He just clocked 30 years, and that was the last ride of his life. In the close-knit rodeo community, where such tragedies are unheard of, the sudden loss of Glenn sent shockwaves of grief throughout. His final moments unfolded not in the dust of the arena, but on a hospital bed, under the urgent care of doctors striving in vain to save his life. The impact of his passing reverberated through the entire professional bull riding games, casting a shadow of mourning over the event. The shock was compounded by the fact that Glenn was known for his skillful and clean dismounts from bulls, rarely finding himself in dangerous predicaments. His reputation for avoiding injuries and wrecks made the circumstances of his accident feel all the more surreal. It was a scenario that those who knew him could hardly believe, as such incidents were out of character for a cowboy of his expertise and finesse. But even the most skilled riders are not immune to fate. At the Bud Light Cup event, even though the bull riders knew the competition would continue, the atmosphere was heavy with shock and sadness. Each rider felt the weight of the loss deeply, but they also knew they had a duty to perform, a way to honor their fallen friend. They climbed onto their bulls with hearts full of memories, each ride a tribute to the legendary bull rider they had lost. In the end, the victory achieved that night wasn't just for the record books. It was a tribute, dedicated to the memory of their comrade, ensuring his spirit rode with them in every buck and turn. Those bull riders competing at the Bud Light Cup event knew that the show would go on that evening, but most were still shell-shocked. They rode in memory of the legendary bull rider and had the final victory dedicated to him. Years after Glenn's death, memorial stickers commemorating the brave, talented bull rider who laughed at danger filled cowboys' vests. After Glenn's passing, the professional bull riders created the Glenn Keeley Award to honor his memory. This award is given to the top Canadian bull rider at the PBR World Finals in Las Vegas each year, a fitting tribute to Glenn's impact on the sport and his national heritage. Glenn's achievements in rodeo are recorded in history, but his true legacy is seen in the lives of his family, friends, and fellow riders he touched. In 2004, the rodeo community came together to start the Glenn Keeley Memorial Bull Riding event in his honor. This event isn't just a competition. It's a way to keep Glenn's spirit alive by supporting a cause he would have cared about. All the money raised goes to the Glenn Keeley Benevolent and Scholarship Fund. Over the years, this fund has given out more than $250,000, helping students and athletes follow their dreams, just as Glenn did. Glenn Keeley may have left us far too early, but his brave soul and the legacy he created will forever echo in the hearts of young cowboys who dare to face the towering challenges of the rodeo. It takes a special kind of person to embrace the perilous dance between man and beast. And Glenn, well, he simply was that kind of man. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.